I'm going to try to piece together what we talked about today. Maybe look at the bigger picture and where IT is going and where the things we talked today fit into that area, and sort of understand why these things are happening. And I think in general, with the pace of business, the pace of change, the velocity of change, organizations, rather than doing that traditional strategic planning and execution against a 3 to 5 year plan, because we can't predict the future that well anymore because of the digital economy moving so fast, organizations are instead investing in a large central kind of platform, digital transformation platform within the organizations, and they're adopting agile processes, DevOps processes in certain cases, to basically compete in the marketplace and to get that velocity of change. So I'm going to tie together what we all talked about today, all the speakers, and talk about where, in general, at a high level, a big picture, where we're going. So what are the fundamental drivers of modern innovation? Sort of the state of the market to give you a sense on some of the technologies we talked about today in the Canadian marketplace. I think I'd also have some worldwide information too. And as I said before, the emergence of a central digital transformation platform happening, modern innovation practices, and I have some closing notes. So Simon Sinek, who knows Simon Sinek in the crowd? Anybody heard of this fella? Yeah, he's kind of a thought leader. He wrote a book called Start With Why. Originally he was a marketer, but he wanted to understand why there are very successful companies that have very loyal brands, loyal customers, and they have loyal employees. And he always said, start with why. What is your purpose? And I think applying this sort of principle to why IT exists in general, we have changed over the last, 6 to 7 years when we became very business relevant. The business looked to us to have a competitive advantage. And so when we change our purpose of why we exist, we change how we do things as well. And that's driven all these new application architectures. It's talked about new processes, reorganizing into agile and DevOps teams. This is how we're doing things. And what we do is changing very fast. We're producing new things, digital products, digital services. And I think most importantly, I thought a lot of CEOs are thinking about changing that experience, that digital experience, and making it flawless, because the end users and our customers expect that. So as I said before, IT's purpose has fundamentally changed in the last 5 to 10 years. And so the business values of, creating shareholder value, being more competitive in the marketplace, delivering things faster, has sort of encroached onto IT and what we do every day. And it's changed how we work. So the velocity has increased, right? We're building microservices architecture. We want to increase speed. And not just a magnitude running this way. We want to have a direction, a velocity, which is a vector quantity. Being a physicist, I appreciate sort of that idea that you have to run fast, but you have to have a direction that you're going in. And secondly, we need agility within our organizations to work at business speed. We need to be agile to react to competitive pressures, react in the public sector space, react to what the constituency expects now that they're all digital citizens. And the fact, I guess a proof point of what I'm talking about is CEOs, 90% of them from a survey with PricewaterhouseCoopers, 1,400 CEOs around 83 countries in the world, they're going to change how they use technology. 51% of them. It's going to be significant change. And we're all going through this within IT because we're now top of mind with the business. In fact, a lot of companies, some of the financial institutions in Canada are saying, look, we're a software company, or we're an IT company, we're a technology company. We are no longer a financial services organization. And you're seeing some acquisitions around the banks actually buying software companies to enhance their offerings. But as we go through this process of becoming faster and more agile, we come up against a couple things. Dr. Yahoo Goldratt came up with this idea back in the lean manufacturing movement within the automotive manufacturing. He says, if you have two groups within an organization that have diametrically opposing goals and incentives, and in the case of IT, we're talking about development and operations, right? Development's always trying to react to change, bring new things onto the market, add new digital services, versus operations, which is more reliable, stable, keep this thing up and running. You end up with issues. And one of the reasons DevOps has been created around these teams who have cross-trained capabilities, and development being responsible for everything to go into production, testing, maybe security people in these small teams, we're trying to get around this issue that Dr. Goldratt talked about. So the other thing we've got to be worried about as we look at microservices architectures or changing application architecture, Melvin Conway, in 67, if I'm not mistaken, Conway's Law was created. He realized when he looked at how we build applications, the communication structure of your company, like the groups within your company, will actually be mirrored in the system that you're building. If it's an application, right? If you have several groups making an application, you'll probably have several different modules of that application. So if you want to look at a silly example, building out a DevOps practice and you're building monolithic applications, you don't have congruency between the application and the communication structure of the teams. It'll start to hamper how you actually design and innovate. People will be stepping on each other's toes as a simple example. So beware of Conway's Law. How many people have heard Conway's Law? A few people, right? So as we look to innovate faster, be more agile, more quick in terms of how we innovate, beware of Conway's Law. Think about how the organization is organized, and is that congruent with the applications in the process of how you move code from development to production, as an example, if you consider the value stream as a system itself. So if we look at the software architecture, I think in the 1990s we had spaghetti coding. I think we all know what that is. I think there's still, a few people in the room that would admit that we still have a lot of integration where we have tight little coupling between applications. We got custom code talking to specific systems without an integration layer in between. In the 2000s, we came up with the lasagna-oriented architecture, right? The N-tier architecture, just like in a lasagna. In 2010s, that's where we started looking at microservices, kind of like a ravioli architecture, right? Where you have an opportunity to have meat ravioli with cheese ravioli and vegetable ravioli all on the same plate. When you eat it, when you consume it, it makes sense, right? So the metaphor here is we have ravioli with maybe a Java framework, a Vertex framework, whatever the developers want to use. In these microservices architectures, they can choose what type of ravioli they want. What's next? Maybe a pizza-oriented architecture. I don't know what's coming next. But we did a survey, Tech Validate did a survey for us late last year, November 2017. 67% of the respondents that were using microservices, so these are existing Red Hat customers, were using it for both new and re-architecting existing apps. I would say, and Christian, you probably agree with me, a lot of organizations have looked at the microservices architecture for legacy applications, monolithic applications, as that first starting point, because they can figure out, based on how that system works, how they need to subdivide it up. If you start a new application in a microservices architecture, you won't know the data-driven design, those domains that I think Keith just mentioned, making sure how you understand how to subdivide your data models, your data domains within your organization to create a microservices architecture. 87% were considering multiple technologies for microservices, so right, multiple frameworks or languages, and 33% recognized benefits within 2 to 6 months of a microservice implementation, which I'm a little bit skeptical of, but it sounds like it is paying back in spades for those who do the microservices correctly. In the Canadian marketplace, if you look at some of the things we talked about today, microservices, 21% of the market, and this is mid last year, so mid 2017. We're looking at or doing microservices, and I think that's representative of some of the stats I saw here in the room when people put their hands up to the question. 26% were looking at containers. That's probably a bit low now. I'd say at least a third, if not 2/5 of the organizations I talk to have started some sort of container strategy. And then DevOps. A lot of organizations are looking at DevOps. When I talk to executives, their number one concern is not necessarily the technology and the architecture. It's about how do I change the culture within the organization so that it's collaborative, it's a high-performance team, et cetera. So in the Canadian marketplace, we're definitely seeing uptake of what we talked about today. So what I'm seeing evolving in the Canadian marketplace, organizations are sort of converging together a whole bunch of technologies, new technologies, some of which we talked about today, into this new central, I would call, digital hub of innovation, right? And this is made up of a platform that allows you to very quickly build digital services, digital products, as well as providing a new digital experience for our customers. And within the core, we still have the legacy. We have the new digital teams building up digital applications. And we're seeing the building of this system in terms of very rapidly being able to deploy new digital-based services. It's comprised of data that's flowing from external to the organization and internal, They're combining it with internal data. It's also combining microservices architectures to understand, and using custom code to differentiate the company. And so this will allow companies to compete in the digital economy. Now, if I was to overlay some of the things we talked about today in a centralized platform, Maureen started talking around, what's the impact of cloud and the development experience, and how are applications being developed, how they're being integrated. Then we had Samir talk about distributed integration and the 3 pillars. And the speakers actually haven't seen these pictures yet, so I want to see the looks on their faces. And then Steve came up and talked about API management, both internal, mostly internal, but also some external discussion. Christian, of course, right in the middle, talking about microservices and OpenShift and how we can take OpenShift and allow it to build out microservices. And then we just saw Keith finish up with integration between the clouds and between microservices. So there's elements of this new digital platform that we're seeing critical aspects of this. This is an API-driven kind of platform. Now, if we focus just on the intelligent core, we look at this new core where organizations are focusing on the custom bespoke development for the secret sauce within the organization that can take that data, use it to create better digital experiences and products and services. At the bottom of this, you can see in red the OpenShift and combination with some of the products we talked about today, right? We have the XPaaS, we have messaging, integration, MQ, API management, and we're combining that with OpenShift so that developers have a seamless experience to build out whatever they need to do, to integrate with whatever they need to do. And on top of that, we have supported runtimes for all the different types of ravioli that you want to run within your organization, and then any of the frameworks. So the beauty of OpenShift is you can take those net new greenfield applications and build them, but at the same time think about how do I modernize all my existing legacy applications or wrap them in integration-based functionality and abstract them out so that we can create this very rapid digital platform. I get asked a lot around modern innovation approaches. How do I go about doing this? Where do I start to build this platform? One of the patterns we've been seeing in the marketplace is to start to develop contemporary applications, cloud native, 12-factor applications, microservices-based applications, and start there and let the organization learn how to look at a different approach to innovation, agile, DevOps, and to build those out and to wrap that with APIs. Then we look to modernize the existing footprint, maybe the legacy systems. You might wrap them in APIs. You may put integration in front of that for data transformation and connectivity. And then in the middle, you can actually bridge these two. So in a Gartner perspective, how do I bridge the two together so I can have the centralized digital platform moving forward to move the organization forward? And our vision around this is kind of looking at, we believe that open hybrid cloud, open multi-cloud, where we actually have connections from the various public cloud providers to maybe an on-prem private cloud, is going to be sort of the future aspect of the deployment models for this new digital platform. A great way to abstract out the public cloud offerings that are available is to layer, like Red Hat Enterprise Linux, RHEL as we call it, across both your on-prem as well as all the public cloud providers. And by doing so, you have a standard operating environment, the bits and pieces that you need from an operating system and a container platform to do that. And then wrap that with OpenShift as well. You can run OpenShift on the public clouds. And think of OpenShift as kind of that next generation operating system. Instead of managing compute, memory, and storage and handling all sort of the application thing, you can think of OpenShift as that managing the resources of the various public clouds and making decisions based on policy and architecture where you actually put your workloads, be it traditional client-server internet or cloud-native applications. So this is my last slide. I think I basically cut out a bunch of slides so we could get back on time. Networked with some clients today around some of the experiences they've had. The Red Hat team will be around as well to talk. Think about that central platform I just talked about. I think a lot of organizations are building up bits and pieces. They got an AI machine learning aspect. They're looking at Kafka. They're looking at microservices. Think about that centralized platform and how that plays a role within the organization. Think about understanding the common middleware and integration use cases and patterns we talked about today. And we do a lot of discovery sessions, and we got the Agile workshop coming up at the end of June that we'd be happy to sit down with you and understand. It's a little late, but Red Hat Summit, which is our client conference, is coming up in San Francisco in May. The OpenStack conference for the Americas is actually here May 24th, 25th, 26th. Anybody going to the OpenStack conference? Okay, a few people. I do publish a lot of articles and blog posts. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter, I put my feeds up there, and there's my email. And as Christian said, be happy to talk to you over Twitter or whatever. Just connect with me, and I can provide information to you for around the Canadian marketplace. And I'll leave you with the point that your technology choice is effectively your innovation choice. The way you innovate and the speed that you innovate and how you innovate and the experience you provide your developers to do things like microservices and integration, or maybe using the lines of business to build net new functionality, is based on your technology choice. And with that, I'm going to close up today's session unless there's any questions. Any questions? No? All right, so again, feedback forms on the table, if you could fill them out. I think we're going to have beverages outside. I forgot to ask Fatty, and you're more than happy to stick. I'll be around after the show, as well will be the Red Hat team. Be happy to chat with you after this. So thanks again for your time today, and I hope it was of value to you.